Everything Everywhere, known more commonly now as EE, was formed from Orange and T-Mobile in 2010. Towards the end of that year, customers of Orange and T-Mobile could use the other network as sort of roaming in order to boost their coverage. The Orange network broadcasts on code 33 and the T-Mobile network on code 30. Many Orange and T-Mobile masts were in the same places pretty much and served almost identical coverage areas. So one of the sort of first things that happened is that Orange masts that served the same areas as T-Mobile ones got decommissioned, so they were no longer broadcasting. At the same time that was happening, Orange masts began being upgraded to the T-Mobile code of code 30. And the reason for doing that is because having two network codes is not ideal as far as call handover and service continuity is concerned. So at the time, you could say only carry a call across one of the networks. You couldn't carry a call from T-Mobile and then carry on an Orange code, although you can do today. Fast forward to today, where all of EE's 4G masts are broadcasting the T-Mobile code of 30, and there are only very, very few Orange masts that are broadcasting code 33. So in this video, I'm going to show you what an Orange mast looks like, and helpfully, due to the panels functionally being fairly similar to modern ones, there are many Orange panelled sites remaining that are broadcasting code 30 now and 4G. However, there are some Orange panelled sites which are broadcasting Orange on code 33. The easiest way to find out whether there is an Orange mast broadcasting code 33 in your area is to do a network search from your phone. Now, if there is an Orange mast broadcasting 33 in the area, a number of different things can show up depending on the age of your phone and SIM card. So on most modern phones, you will get two EEs appearing in the network list. The top one is almost always EE on code 30, so the T-Mobile and 4G and modern network, and the EE at the bottom or lower down is the Orange code 33 network. On older handsets, you will get T-Mobile appearing for the code 30 and Orange for code 33. And on some, code 30 appears as Orange T-Mobile and Orange as Orange. Now for the masts themselves, I'm going to work from roughly the lowest capacity type to the highest capacity type. So that means the first type of Orange mast I'm going to talk about is the Omnidirectional 2G type. So these are not sectored, they are omnidirectional, so equal signal in all directions, and typically use quite compact antennas. So this is one example. Now you might not be able to actually recognise the orange antennas in this picture, although they are quite clear. So the two flagpoles sticking up over the roof of the lighthouse are actually the orange mast. Now the reason there's two of these poles is for spatial diversity reasons, to improve signal basically. A good way in fact to think about it is having two ears instead of one. It helps you to sort of focus on one particular area to then improve your hearing of it. Now this produces, despite the fact these aerials are omnidirectional, covers really quite a large area around this lighthouse. There were also Orange 2G antennas which look very similar to modern sectored ones, which come in the form of these sort of compact tube type antennas. Now this mast is now a tri-sector upgraded EE mast, but it looked exactly the same when it was Orange 2G omnidirectional, because the actual antenna is hidden within that top shroud section. Now those used polarization or diversity for their signal reception purposes. The next step up from omnidirectional 2G orange is sectored 2G orange. Now, these typically used 2 single port antennas on each sector of the mast. So by having 2 vertically polarised antennas on each sector, you then get the diversity on each sector. Now, like I said, these are only 1 port each, which does make them quite recognisable. They're quite sort of thin because they're only V-pole, and they tend to be quite corroded and actually often orange coloured because of the amount of time that they've been outside for. So you have your 3-sectored 2G orange mast. What's the easiest way to add capacity? Well, to add 3G. Now this means a new frequency band, i.e. the 2100 MHz band, as well as the 1800 MHz band. Now panels at this point in time were not quite so frequency flexible as the ones are currently, so what that basically means is new antennas. So the panels that we used are dual banders. Now there are 2 types that you get: vertical polarisation or mixed or diagonal polarisation, which are very similar to the type that we have today. Now the dual band vertical polarisation panels are, because they're vertical polarisation only, you need to have spatial diversity, so there are 2 panels per sector. Now, 1 port in each panel is for 1800 MHz and the other port is for 2100 MHz. So across the 2 panels, you have 2 ports for 1800 MHz and 2 ports for 2100 MHz, and the distance between those is used for the spatial diversity purposes. So we can see that in terms of 1800 MHz, it's fairly similar to the mast we've just covered, except it adds 2100 MHz in a similar way, with the sort of 2 antennas on each side of each sector being mounted in the same sort of lump of panel, as opposed to, say, being 2 separate vertical units. There are a lot of masts that use this type of panel layout, but with slightly different looking panels. Now in a lot of these cases, the panels corrode to look orange again, which does slightly give the game away, but also having like an MHA in the middle of the sector with cables going left and right, so 1 to each panel, indicates also very clearly that the mast is using vertical polarisation panels. A testament to the capability of these panels is the fact that most of them are actually broadcasting EE 4G today, and with actually very good speeds, and in fact no different really to modern cross-polarisation panels that you'll see to this day. Which leads us on quite nicely to the cross-polarisation panels. Now, for carrying 2G and 3G, these use 4 ports, so 2 for 1800 MHz and 2 for 2100 MHz, and with these 2 ports for each band, they use polarizational diversity. So 1 port has diagonals at +45 and 1 port feeds the other diagonal. So you see there we have polarizational diversity. So in schematic form, this is roughly what you are looking at. So you can see that for each band there are the X's for the polarizational diversity. Now these masts also come in with a variety of different panels, but 4 ports into each panel is quite a sort of noticeable trend. So now that we've covered 3-sector 2G and 3G orange panels, what about if you need even more capacity? And that's where the 6-sector orange masts come in. Now primarily these were 6-sector 2G and 3G, but I have come across one that looks very much like it was 6-sector 3G and is certainly 6-sector 3G, 3-sector 2G to this day. So this 6-sector mast looks rather like some of the vertical polarisation ones that we've seen before. However, unlike all the masts we've seen so far with 2 panels per sector, where the panels were both pointing the same direction because of spatial diversity, in the case of 6-sector masts, all the panels point slightly off from each other in order to produce the 6-sector effect with these reduced angle panels that orange has used. Another indication this is 6-sector is each panel has 4 feeders going into it, so it's 4 ports on each panel. And these panels are cross polarization again, but they're reduced angle compared to the ones we've previously seen, and that's why you need 6 panels in order to cover the sort of circle around the mast. Now, as you can see, from having 6 sectors with 4 feeders per panel and 6 panels, you can see there are an awful lot of feeders leaving from the bottom of this mast. Now, unfortunately, this orange 6-sector mast is no longer running at all, so it's not broadcasting any signal. However, just below these antennas is the EE array of panels, which is doing the full 4G and everything else on code 30. There were also much more compact 6-sector 2G, 3G orange masts, such as the one pictured here. So now the final mast that we're going to look at is the 6-sector 3G, 3-sector 2G, 4G mast. Now this mast has 6 panels all pointing in slightly different directions, which is the really big giveaway that this is a 6-sector mast. If we look slightly further down on the mast, there are 3 MHAs with red tags, so they're 3 1800 masted amplifiers, which means there are 3 sectors for 1800 megahertz. Now these connect to 85-degree ports on the panels. Meanwhile, the 2100 feeders connect to 33-degree ports on the panels. Now there are 6 MHAs for 2100, so it's clear there are 6 sectors for that, especially with the 33-degree beam angle, for which you very definitely need 6 sectors in order to provide sort of all-round coverage. Now this mast was broadcasting code 30, and the 4G speeds from it were very reasonable, as were the 3G ones, which you would expect from it being a 6-sector, because that is a lot of 3G capacity. Orange mast can broadcast either GPRS or Edge for 2G, although the majority I see are broadcasting GPRS. And in terms of 3G, most of them broadcast HSDPA up to about 7.2 megabits per second, instead of the DCHSDPA up to 42 megabits per second that many of the T-Mobile code 30 masts broadcast, although part of that is down to the things that slow down the upgrade of orange masts to code 30 also delays them being, say, upgraded to more modern forms of 3G. Just to give an idea of the spectrum of speeds that I've attained on orange 3G, this is a speed test from quite a rural site that only served a relatively small road, and you can see that the speed there is quite limited. It's probably got very old backhaul serving it, so that might be what's delaying it being switched over to code 30 and carrying 4G, for example. Now this speed is an awful lot better, and this was serving a quite busy town centre, and you can see that the speed is actually very good for 3G. But in both of these cases, I don't think I would have even ended up on the code 33 if I just let my phone do what it wanted, because EE and T-Mobile SIMs favour code 30. It's only Orange SIMs which tend to prefer code 33, but nonetheless my old Orange SIMs do spend almost all their time on code 30 nowadays, because there's so little orange about. So in other words, in these places where there was this orange 3G, I wouldn't have seen it had I not forced my phone onto orange, in other words. So the 0.08 megabits per second doesn't really need to be sort of considered in a way, because there was code 30 4G there. Thank you for watching this video about these orange masts. As we've seen, most of them are broadcasting standard sort of EE 4G now that you'll use without thinking twice about, and even the ones that are broadcasting actual orange code you can pretty much seamlessly connect to, so you still most likely wouldn't notice